Evening, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch on Sunday, December 3, 2023 on the planet. I hope you're well. I hope you've been reading my posts, both Facebook and YouTube, on the correlation of space weather events and earthquakes. I wanted to give you an example, show you examples of one, despite what other people say, there is an increase in seismic activity on our planet. And that's why I wanted to show you the magnitude 7 and above earthquakes for this year alone and the correlation with space weather impacts. So out of the 23 major earthquakes so far this year, not over yet, 17 were preceded by space weather events. Of the remaining 6, the highly charged particles, cosmic rays, don't just originate from the sun. They also originate from what we call galactic cosmic rays, so the remnants from exploding stars. But anyway, I wanted to show you an example of just how many we've had. And folks, there's been a great many more magnitude 6 to 6.9 earthquakes this year. A lot more. But just going through all the magnitude 7 plus was enough work. So I wanted to show you the correlation. So you need to understand that when a solar event happens on our sun, a solar event could be a flare, which sometimes, not always, releases the coronal mass ejection containing billions of tons of the highly charged plasma containing the protons and electrons. It could be a filament eruption, ejecting a CME. It doesn't have to be an explosive event. A coronal hole opening, such as the one I've been showing you, which releases the solar winds at a greatly accelerated rate. The timing to reach Earth all depends on the space weather environment and the force of the event. Anywhere from 12 to 72 hours to reach us. I think very rarely 72 hours. The last one only took 24 hours. And then there is the time of absorption. This is a new word I'm going to be using. The absorption of the highly charged particles. 1, into our brains and hearts. And 2, through the Earth's crust, going deep below to affect and cause bubble nucleation of the silica-rich magma. And as that rises up through the mantle plumes, exerting its pressure underneath the crust, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So the next one is not going to be from an explosive event from the sun. It's going to be from that very large coronal hole opening, bringing in the accelerated solar winds, bringing in the highly charged particles. It is the highly charged particles. It's not something that you see in all the fancy videos of the sun exploding and the filament eruptions. It's not that. It's what it's hurling into space. And again, it does not have to be an explosive event. Absorption of the cosmic rays. Timing. Timing after impact. You know, anywhere between 8 and 72 hours, we have earthquakes and or volcanic eruptions. And again, the last one, the Philippines, was 24 hours. And that's why I also included in that list 2 to 4 days prior to those earthquakes, the events that happened on our sun, to show you the correlation between solar events and earthquakes. Philippines. So another 7.0 a couple 3 hours ago. And also, There have been a few deep earthquakes well away from the epicenter around the Philippines. Further north in Leyte Gulf and further south. They're deleting those. The energy from this earthquake did not originate from any other earthquakes. It doesn't happen that way anymore. I'm sorry, that guy from Missouri. It doesn't happen that way anymore. It's happening this way. And that's why it's continuing to happen. Let's talk about the antipode from these earthquakes. The antipode, this is from a study from the Oregon State University, where they looked at 40 or 44 years worth of earthquakes, totaling 5,000 earthquakes, anything with a magnitude of, I think it was 6 or 6.5 and above. The energy will go through the center, through the center of the earth, and come out at the antipode, the opposite side, within 30 degrees. It doesn't have to be exact. Within 30 degrees. It will lose between 1 to a 1.5 magnitude by the time it comes out on the other side. We have a whole hell of a lot of energy traveling through the earth. Timing, I've seen it happen within minutes. Or it could be hours, or it could be a couple of days. The exact antipode is somewhere north Brazil. However, within 30 degrees, it almost always happens along the mid-Atlantic ridge between South America and Africa. I will also be watching the Caribbean area. Antipode, and again, there's a lot of energy traveling through the earth right now. What else? Solar events hits the planet, absorption through the crust, too far down at least into the mantle transition zone here, or further down to the outer core, heating up the outer core, heating up the magma, causing its rise with its pressure to the underside of the lithosphere. That energy is going to find the point of least resistance. One, where the crust is thinnest, the oceanic crust. Subduction zone through the plate interface, which is where these earthquakes are happening. The plate interface is the interface, the gap between the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate. So that gap in between, and volcanoes. So much has been happening on our planet in my personal life. I've been watching Central and Northern Sumatra for a while. I've seen the great increase in earthquakes, including migrating up to Mount Toba. Therefore, that large volcanic eruption at Mount Marapi, not Merapi, Marapi, is no surprise to me. I've been watching the earthquakes working up there. So now this coronal hole is already Earth-facing. Timing? You know, the NASA and the NOAA models, a lot of it's guesswork at first. So their timing is tomorrow, G2 moderate geomagnetic storm, therefore expect the possibility of a G3 strong, and then the following day a G1. However, that will be altered because when I look at the graphs, this solar winds are going to be elevated till about Thursday. Therefore, even if we get a solar wind impact for 48 hours, well, the planet's going to be rotating around twice. So we're going to get hit on all sides. How are we going to monitor it? By watching the KP index. The KP index is a measurement of, it's used to measure the intensity or the magnitude of geomagnetic instability, geomagnetic storms, and its disturbances on Earth's protective magnetic field. We're also going to be watching the solar wind speed. So the average solar wind speed hitting our planet at any given time in the absence of any solar events is anywhere from 250 to 350 kilometers per second. Once it starts getting around 400, 450, we're starting to approach some instabilities. It can go up to 900 kilometers per second. It can go to 1,000 kilometers per second. That's a lot of pressure hitting our shields. And if that's sustained for a couple of days, the whole planet's going to get it. Yes, the backside of the planet gets the solar winds. Yes, it curves around and comes back in. Yes, but the sun-facing side is what gets the brunt. So it does not have to be an explosive, eruptive event on the sun. The main thing is the highly charged particles. So one from a flare that most often, not always, but most often releases a coronal mass ejection, which contains billions of tons of the highly charged particles. So too from filament eruptions. However, coronal hole openings release more of the solar winds. So I'm going to start using a new term, absorption. Did I just say it a few minutes ago? I don't know. The absorption of the highly charged particles into our brains and heart and through the crust into the mantle plumes, causing bubble nucleation of silica-rich magma. Heating, pressure, rises up, comes up through the mantle plumes. Boom. So just because it's not a big X-class flare or filament eruption, you don't need that. This coronal hole opening is going to present a whole host of problems starting tomorrow. You're going to feel the pressure on your brains once again. All the neurological and neuropsychological symptoms and effects I've explained, but on our planet as well, unfortunately. So this is going to be yet another test, another gauge to see how our planet is responding to the destabilizing and weakening of our protective magnetic field. I'm trying to stay caught up. Lots of things happening. I'm trying to tell you as much as I can. Anyway, so that's the next event. G2, moderate geomagnetic storm forecasted. Let's see if it heads up to a G3, strong. And don't believe the nonsense and the lies and the distraction that we have not had an increase of seismic events. 23 magnitude 7 plus earthquakes in 11 months is a heck of a lot. And about maybe 3 times as many magnitude 6 earthquakes. The massive destruction in Afghanistan times 3 or times 4 that killed thousands of people wasn't even a 7, it was a 6.4. Same thing in Nepal. Great many magnitude 6s this year. Anyway, I'll try and get back later on tonight, folks.